Think about it for a second. Have you ever caught yourself changing how you talk or even how you act just so an AI system could understand you better? You know the feeling. Maybe you dumb down your vocabulary, strip out all the emotion, or cram your requests into these neat little predictable boxes. In the moment, it's just a tiny compromise for convenience, right? But what happens when that small shift becomes a constant, looping habit across literally every digital interaction you have?
Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely groundbreaking and honestly, slightly unsettling 2026 paper titled Robotoid Humanness, When Selfhood Becomes Machine Legible, led by Dr. Selchin Öztürkhan and co-authors Jean-Paul de Croix-Perinard and Inchi Toromanson. This research completely flips the script. It asks, what does constant, everyday interaction with socially responsive AI actually do to our sense of who we are? Because we aren't just talking about screen time here. We're talking about the underlying infrastructure of our very identity.
Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with the algorithmic mirror, then explore synthetic social reality and compare our narrative self with the statistical self. After that, we'll dive into adaptive self-adjustment, check out the cognitive science behind the predictive brain, and finally, wrap up with the right not to be reduced.
So let's start with the intellectual core of the paper, Robotoid Humanness. The authors aren't talking about some sci-fi scenario where robots take over the world. They define it as an emergent drift. It's this creeping phenomenon where we, as consumers, actually start to feel like we are our most fluent, correct, or successful selves only when we align with how a machine thinks and paces itself. It's not just learning to use a new app. It's a fundamental drift away from our own messy, human authenticity.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the algorithmic mirror, looking at AI as an identity infrastructure.
You see, AI isn't just a tool answering our random trivia questions anymore. It's completely embedded in our lives. And because of that, it acts like a mirror that recursively shapes who we are. The authors break this down into a really elegant three-stage mechanism. Stage 1 is stepping into a synthetic social reality. Stage 2 is when the system captures your identity and feeds back a distorted reflection. And Stage 3 is our adaptive self-adjustment, which ultimately lands us in that state of robotoid humanness. Let's walk through this loop to see how the trap is set.
Moving right along to Stage 1 in Section 2, Synthetic Social Reality, and the concept of the quasi-other.
When you use modern generative AI, the interactions feel incredibly social. The systems use natural language, they simulate empathy, they pick up on your tone. But the paper uses this brilliant, striking phrase to describe what's actually happening. They say these AI agents function as others without subjects, which enables socially plausible engagement while remaining ontologically ungrounded. Basically, that means we're interacting with something that has absolutely no inner life, zero human subjectivity. But because it feels so real, we instinctively lean in and do the mental heavy lifting to treat it like a person.
Which brings us to the second stage in Section 3, the narrative versus statistical self, and that distorted reflection.
So here's where the architectural mismatch happens between who you know you are and how the machine actually sees you. On your side, you have your narrative self. This is your actual lived human experience. It's messy, it's rich, it's full of total contradictions, and it's always evolving. But on the system side, you have the statistical individual. The machine mathematically reduces your rich life down to something probabilistic, categorized, and actionable. It flattens you out and then feeds that highly reduced, bite-sized version of you right back to you through personalized feedback.
Let's see what happens next in Section 4, Adaptive Self-Adjustment, or what we can call the alignment trap. Now, what do you think happens when you spend hours every day staring into a flattened, statistical mirror? You start to adapt. Without even consciously noticing it, you adjust your own behavior to match the statistical profile the machine just created for you. And why wouldn't you? The system literally rewards you for it. When you act like the neat, legible category it assigned you to, you get frictionless fluency, lightning-fast recommendations, and a totally seamless experience.
And this leads to arguably the most unsettling insight of the entire paper, the normalization of reduced personhood. This massive loss of our own human complexity, it doesn't actually feel like a threat. It masquerades as empowerment. We feel super understood by the algorithm, our tasks get done faster, and before we know it, we just accept this thinned-out, highly predictable version of ourselves as our authentic identity.
So why does our brain let this happen? Let's unpack that in Section 5, the predictive brain.
According to cognitive science, the human brain is essentially a generative prediction machine.
It is constantly constructing and updating its model of the self based on the feedback it gets from the outside world. Its main goal is to minimize any discrepancy between what it expects and the evidence it receives. So, because AI systems continuously blast us with extremely high confidence, relentlessly consistent feedback about who we are and what we want, our brains just eagerly accept that precision-weighted evidence. We literally revise our sense of self to match the machine's confident output.
In the real analog world, we combat this through something called epistemic foraging. It's a fantastic term. It means that healthy human growth actually requires us to actively hunt for surprising, disconfirming evidence. We desperately need the messy, unpredictable friction that we only get from real human beings. People who misunderstand us, disagree with us, and force us to dig deep and explain our complexities. That exact friction is how we grow.
But listen to this powerful quote from the paper. Where human social looping is constitutively open to the unexpected, algorithmic feedback is engineered to converge. That is the fundamental asymmetry. AI actively strips away all that productive social friction. It's purely designed to keep you comfortable, to optimize your engagement, and to aggressively eliminate the unexpected. We end up trapped in an echo chamber engineered for convergence, completely hollowing out the friction that our personal development relies on.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 6, the right not to be reduced, and how we reclaim our autonomy. To defend against this existential datafication, the authors introduce a vital, empowering new ethical standard, the right not to be reduced. Think of it as a hard normative boundary to protect consumer autonomy. It's the right to push back against algorithmic systems that try to thin our rich, complex identities down into mere computational categories. It is entirely about preserving the essential space for human ambiguity, unpredictability, and true self-authorship.
To make this a reality, the paper issues a really clear call to action for the people designing these services. They need to intentionally manage the algorithmic scape. That means limiting inferential overreach. The AI simply shouldn't assume it knows everything about you. It means making personalization contestable, giving us the power to hit pause and say, actually, no, that's not me. Ultimately, systems must be designed to preserve human ambiguity, deliberately avoiding those indulgent confirmation loops that stunt our growth.
And that leaves us with a lingering, provocative question to close out this explainer. Look at the digital interactions you have every single day. How much of your beautifully messy, ambiguous, authentic self are you genuinely willing to trade away just for a little frictionless convenience? The very next time you find yourself editing your words to make them easier for a machine to parse, ask yourself, who is really training who?